now turn to Section 1.
Between a student and the coordinator of the Student Service Centre. First, you have some time to read questions 1 to 3. Now listen to the conversation and answer questions 1 to 3. Hi, sit down please. How can I help you?
Thank you. I'm a student in the sociology faculty. I'm coming to ask for some information about renting a room in the college or near the campus. My name is Sarah.
Yes, Sarah. How long have you been here in Sydney? You are not new, I suppose.
No, I'm in my second year. I came to Sydney 18 months ago from Korea.
Where are you living now?
I live with my aunt in my cousin's room. It's pretty nice to live with my relatives, but unfortunately my cousin has finished his term and is returning from Britain next week. I have to rent a room for myself.
Yes, it sounds a little unfortunate, but I suppose it's a good chance for you to have a deeper understanding to real world.
I hope so.
Well, what sort of thing are you looking for? What we provide ranges from shared flat to homestay. And of course we have houses with gardens if you like.
No, the house with a garden is obviously out of my price range. Shared flat is not bad, but I prefer a homestay. I enjoy the feeling of living with the family.
When do you plan to begin the rent? Next week, you just said?
No, my cousin is arriving by next week. So I hope to move out by this weekend.
This weekend, okay. The main area we deal with is around the university.
Around the university, aha. Do you have anything near the northern gate of the university? You know, the sociology faculty is near the northern gate.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 4 to 10. Now listen to the conversation and answer questions 4 to 10. Yes, what sort of price are you thinking of?
Well, could you give me some idea? You know, I have no experience of renting a room. I don't know what price is reasonable, but I hope it's not over $300.
I see. Usually the homestay ranges from $180 per month.
Only $180?
Yes, to $350 depending on a number of different factors.
What does it depend on?
Well, obviously the quality of the house, the facilities and extra services.
Oh, I don't care about the quality very much, as long as it's clean. As to the facilities, I want the room with the separate bathroom. Kitchen isn't a necessity, because I don't want to cook by myself. I hope to have meals with the family if possible.
Okay, let me check the files. Yes, I think this one might suit you. It's a family house with 2 vacant bedrooms.
How about the owner of the house? I mean, is it a family or...
According to the file, it is a retired lady. She wants to find college students as tenants.
That's great! What's the condition of the rooms?
The bigger bedroom is furnished and with a bathroom, and the rent is $320 per month. The smaller one charges $250. It is furnished too, but without bathroom.
Oh, $320. It's a bit out of my range, but I think I prefer the bigger one. How about the meals?
Well, the rent includes breakfasts and suppers, no lunches, however. You have to buy your lunch.
That's no problem. I usually have my lunch in the college cafeteria.
And that doesn't cover the water bill and electricity fee, but the laundry is included.
Fine. Could you tell me the address?
Yes, it's on 323 West Park Road.
Let me get that down. 323. Okay, it's near the university. So, when can I have a look at the room? You know, I'm a little pressed for time.
The file says the landlady is in every afternoon. So this week, say Friday?
Oh, I'm afraid I can't make it then. I have a lecture on Friday afternoon till 5:30. How about Thursday?
Okay, that's fine. Would 5 be okay?
Yes, fine. Just come here.
Yes, here in the student service office. Oh, before I forget, before moving, you have to pay 1 month's rent in advance.
Really? Oh, I didn't know that before. Could I ask why?
As the deposit. You know, in case you damage the property or move out without giving notice. Usually this doesn't happen, but standing in the owner's shoes...
Yes, I understand it all. So that's $320. Okay, I'll take the money if I'm satisfied.
Well, a word of advice. Don't forget to get a receipt when you pay the deposit or rent.
Yes, thank you so much.
That is the end of part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 2.
Part 2. You have just arrived at the student hostel where you will live during the term. The manager is explaining the rules and another student is asking questions. Listen to the conversation and complete the form.
First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 16. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 16.
Excuse me, I want to ask you about the charges for meals. Are they the same as they were last year?
No, I'm afraid they're not. We've managed to keep most of them the same, but we've had to increase the charge for breakfast.
How much is it now?
It's $2.50. It used to be $2.
I see. What about lunch?
It's unchanged, still $3.
Does dinner still cost $3?
Yes, it does. We've managed to keep the prices down this year, but the best deal is the 3-meal plan for $48 per week. We give you vouchers to present when you come into the cafeteria, and you get 21 meals for your $48. That works out to a little more than $2 a meal. The 2-meal plan is also at last year's rates of $36 per week. We give you vouchers for that too.
My sister was in this hostel before me. I'm sure the hours for breakfast used to be longer.
Yes, they were. They used to be 7 to 9:30, but to keep our expenses down, we made them 7 to 9.
Lunch is the way it was, though. Hold on, dinner 6 to 7:30, isn't that a change?
Yes, it is, and in fact the form is wrong. It used to be 5:30 to 7:30, but now it's 6 to 8 p.m.
6 to 8 p.m, that's good.
So, which plan would you like?
I'd like to think about it, please. I need to check my lecture schedule.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 17 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 17 to 20.
Can you tell me how to get to my room, please?
Of course. You're in the new wing, which is very freshly painted and pleasant. But I'm afraid you're going to have to go to a couple of other offices before you can have the key. You're in the admissions office now. Leave this office and turn right and go to the end of the hall. The last office is the fees office, where you can pay the balance of your room deposit. They'll give you a receipt.
Okay.
After you've been to the fees office, come back past admissions. You'll see a very large room at the northwestern corner of the building. You can't miss it. That's the student lounge, and if you go in there, you can meet some of the other students and see who'll have a room near you.
That's good. Can I get a cup of coffee there?
Yes, there's a vending machine in the corner. Then go to the key room, which is opposite the lift and next to the library. Show them your receipt, and you can pick up your key there.
My luggage was sent on ahead. Do you know where I should collect it?
The box room is next to the women's toilet. You'll have to get the key from the key room.
Thank you.
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turn to section 3.
You will hear two business studies students discussing a presentation they'll do on an article on working effectively in groups. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 26. Now listen and answer questions 21 to 26.
So, Brad, what did you think of the article on group work?
Oh, hi, Helen. Yeah, it was pretty good, with helpful pieces of advice on how to make group work effective.
I think we were lucky to be given such a straightforward text to present at the management skills seminar.
Yeah. Actually, shall we discuss it now? Have you got time?
Sure. It's only a 10-minute presentation, so we just need to explain and then give our views on the main points raised in the article.
I'll jot down some notes. Right.
So, there are 3 main sections. I suggest we start with listening.
Yeah, effective listening in groups, because it's not something that's frequently covered on courses in our field.
No, and we should say that in the presentation.
Yeah. And also effective listening's pretty simple, you know. I don't think it's hard to learn.
Well, people think it's easy, but in my experience, most of us tend to be very lazy listeners.
Okay, I wouldn't argue with that.
Something I do think we should emphasize is the power of the listener's posture, gestures, etc., in making speakers feel respected.
Not that you're just waiting for them to finish before jumping in with your own ideas.
Uh-huh.
Okay, right. The next section is on goal setting. Let's make sure we're clear what the article says on this.
Yeah. Well, firstly, it says that all group members must be given time to explain their own goals.
That's it, yeah.
And then, did it say that the whole group should agree on common goals?
That's a bit too strong. It's more that everyone's agendas should be equally acceptable. But it does say that goals have to be realistic, you know...
Achievable within a particular time?
You've got it. That's really what the article's saying. There isn't really any point in having ideals if group members know they won't come to anything within a reasonable period. So, I think a summary covering those points will be enough for that part of the presentation, don't you?
Yep. Now, the last section is about conflict resolution.
Actually, I thought it was the worst part of the article.
Me too.
I don't think it went into sufficient detail on the issue.
Actually, I thought it devoted too much space to it, but that it was all rather boring, you know?
It didn't mention some of the more radical theories.
Absolutely. I found that really irritating.
Right, and also I think it could have said more about conflict sometimes being healthy in groups.
Absolutely. It just mentioned rather glibly about how we should avoid thinking of winners and losers, and that quick resolution of conflict is always desirable.
Without explaining what these terms mean?
Well, it gives quite detailed definitions, but doesn't develop a proper argument.
Right. So, for the presentation, I think we just give some definitions and
then explain what we felt were the weaknesses in the article's treatment of conflict resolution.
Yeah, good.
Now you have some time to look at questions 27 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 27 to 30.
So, let's think about what we have to prepare for the actual presentation.
Well, I suppose we'll use PowerPoint, but I'm hopeless at using it, especially if it has any visuals. I really have to look into doing a course on it because I know I'll need it in the future.
Don't worry, I'm quite happy using PowerPoint and I'll put it together when everything else is ready.
That's a relief. But yes, do that later.
Okay. Now, I heard the tutor saying we have to include some well-chosen quotations from the article.
I'm not sure if we do. I'll email him to find out.
No need, I can just have a look at the specs he gave us when he set the task.
That'll be quicker.
But the tutor definitely said we have to prepare a handout to go with the talk. I'm not really sure how we do that.
Sarah did one last year.
Who's she?
She's doing the same option as me on marketing. I'll ask her advice on what to include.
Great. So that just leaves the bibliography at the end. I suppose it'll mainly be articles.
Yeah. So we'll just look on the web, and we can leave that till later.
But we've been advised against that?
Well, we could have a look through some journals in the library.
I think we should start by looking through module handbooks. I think that'll give us some good leads.
Yeah, you're probably right. So, that's all the topics.
That is the end of section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 4.
Part 4. You'll hear a lecture on human civilization.
First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Today in our History Series lectures, Professor Smith is going to introduce the history of human civilization. Welcome, Professor Smith.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Do you know when human civilization originated? And what's the development of human language? Well, the first 2 stages in the development of civilized man were probably the invention of primitive weapons and the discovery of fire, though nobody knows exactly when he acquired the use of the latter. The origin of language is also obscure. No doubt it began very gradually. Animals have a few cries that serve as signals, but even the highest apes have not been found able to pronounce words, even with the most intensive professional instruction. Apparently, a necessity for the mastering of speech is the superior brain of man. When man became sufficiently intelligent, we must suppose that he gradually increased the number of cries for different purposes. It was a great day when he discovered that speech could be used for narrative. There are those who think that in this respect, picture language preceded oral language. A man could draw a picture on the wall of his cave to show in which direction he had gone, or what prey he hoped to catch. Probably picture language and oral language developed side by side. I'm inclined to think that language has been the most important single factor in the development of man. Two important stages came not so long before the dawn of written history. The first was the domestication of animals. The second was agriculture. Agriculture was a step in human progress to which, subsequently, there was nothing comparable until our own machine age. Agriculture made possible an immense increase in the number of the human species in the regions where it could be successfully practiced. These were, at first, only those in which nature fertilized the soil after each harvest. Agriculture met with violent resistance from the pastoral nomads, but the agricultural way of life prevailed in the end because of the physical comforts it provided. Another fundamental technical advance was writing, which, like spoken language, developed out of pictures, but as soon as it had reached a certain stage, it was possible to keep records and transmit information to people who were not present when the information was given. These inventions and discoveries, fire, speech, weapons, domestic animals, agriculture, and writing, made the existence of civilized communities possible. From about 3000 BC until the Industrial Revolution, less than 200 years ago, there was no technical advance comparable to these. During this long period, man had enough time to become accustomed to his technique, and to develop the beliefs and political organizations to appropriate it. There was, of course, an immense extension in the area of civilized life. At first it had been confined to the Nile, the Euphrates, the Tigris, and the Indus, but at the end of the period in question it covered much the greater part of the livable globe. I do not mean to suggest that there was no technical progress during this long time. There was progress. There were even two inventions of great importance, namely gunpowder and the mariner's compass, but neither of these can be compared in their revolutionary power to such things as speech and writing and agriculture.
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Give it to me.